You were asked to include accurate historical information in your narrative. In this revision video, we will review what historical accuracy means, where this information comes from, and what it looks like in your story. Historical accuracy means staying true to what actually happened in history. You can find the information shown here in a history textbook. In your writing, you are not changing history. For example, Sweden was a neutral country during World War II. This means that Sweden did not get involved in any fights with other countries. If you decided to write about Germany invading Sweden, you would be changing history. This would not be historically accurate. This is why your research is very important. You already took notes on true events, and these events do not change. Once you completed your research, you had learned about real people, places, and events that occurred in history. For the remainder of this video, we are going to refer back to this example research we talked about in class. All of the information written in this chart is true. Please pause the video and review the information about the Danish rescue movement. Press play when you are ready to continue. Your next job was to create a fictional conflict as well as fictional courageous characters based on the history you had just learned about. In this example, we decided our setting was going to be the Burmeister and Wain's shipyard in Denmark, which was a real shipyard. We then made up our protagonist, who was going to be a fictional worker who worked at this shipyard. Borg Hoff was a real person from history who did work at this shipyard, so we are going to make him a minor character. He is going to be friends with our protagonist. Remember, the protagonist is the main character. The character you create is going to be in the story the most. Borg Hoff will only be mentioned a few times. This chart is from the character planning worksheet. In the first row, I talked more about my fictional courageous character. I decided to research Danish names and came up with Alf Jepsen. Even though Alf is a fictional character, I'm having him participate in a strike that actually happened in history. Borg Hoff is a minor character, so everything he does in the story is happening more in the background. Alf will be doing all the work, but he talks about Borg a lot. This is an example of how I took my research and turned it into a story. The words that are in red are bits of information from the research, so they are true. The rest of the writing is all the fictional story I created based on what I learned from my research. As a side note, the last sentence in blue is my fictional character being courageous. Please follow along as I read through the excerpt. Note where the font changes color and why it's changing color. Feel free to pause and reread if needed. Alf left work once again feeling very frustrated. He was tired of the Nazi soldiers always being at the Burmeister and Wain shipyard, a place Alf used to care a lot about. But ever since the soldiers arrived, they were nothing but rude and aggressive. They always had a complaint or comment about something. Alf did not like their presence at the shipyard, and after what happened today, he was determined to do something about it. He remembered a conversation he overheard where Borg Hoff was talking about going on strike. A lot of the workers weren't interested because they just wanted to mind their business and make money for their families. But how could they just mind their business when one of their fellow shipyard workers was murdered in front of them just because he was Jewish? Alf decided he wanted to talk to Borg about going on strike. He wanted to do something to help other Jewish workers from a similar fate. As you can see, most of what is written is fictional. I took parts of my research and added them to enhance the story. A common mistake students make when trying to write their historical fiction narrative is taking their research and just rewriting it into their document. Unlike the excerpt we just read, this example doesn't tell a story. There is nothing fictional about it. Borg Hoff worked at the Burmeister and Wain's shipyard. He didn't like the Nazi soldiers and hated that they were in control of where he worked. Hoff was in charge of many strikes and walkouts during this time. Doesn't it sound like something you found on the internet while doing research? Your narrative needs to tell a creative story. And now you can start revising your narrative. As you reread your writing, look for the places where you included historical information. Make sure you did not change history. that you incorporated enough historical information, hint, check out how much you highlighted, and finally that you wrote a fictional story and not a book report. Happy revising!